First of all, can I ask you, Andrew and I were just discussing, why is it that the days of the budget being announced, when the bloke would come out, the Chancellor with his little red suitcase, and it would all be very exciting, why do we know so much detail so early these days?
I think in years gone by, there were lots of announcements in a budget and only one made a headline. And the government got quite frustrated, this is previous governments as well, quite frustrated that lots of the good news that they were in a budget wasn't getting on the tea time news, wasn't getting on the 10 o'clock news, and other announcements were being squeezed out. So what we've seen is a sort of drip effect now of good announcements, as the Treasury would see it, in the days leading up to a budget, so you sort of dominate the headlines and get those good news stories out. I think that's what the government's thinking.
The Speaker of the Commons, whoever it is, and currently it's Sir Lindsay Hoyle, before that it was the completely ghastly John Bercow, but nevertheless, they think Parliament is sacrosanct and major announcements relating to government business should be done in the Commons. Is Sir Lindsay Hoyle going to be happy about this?
Well, Sir Lindsay Hoyle will not be happy about this whatsoever. You know, it's not just the budget. There are various government announcements that are made either through leaks to newspapers or in press conferences or in set-piece statements where Prime Minister might go to a naval shipyard, for example, to announce something about shipbuilding. Doesn't do it to Parliament first. And certain parliamentarians, and particularly the Speaker, gets very upset about that. So I think either before Prime Minister's questions today, when Sir Lindsay Hoyle will be in the chair for that, he might say something there. Or for the budget, it's actually his Deputy Speaker, who's the Chairman of Ways and Means, that's Dame Eleanor Lang. She might say something, and she's even more ferocious than the Speaker, if anything. So I think there will be a reprimand for the government today, but ultimately there's not a lot that the Speaker can do about it.
But they're sidelining Parliament, and already people have such a low bar for Parliament and for politicians. And if you just diminish its role in major state occasions like the budget, it's no wonder people don't give a hoot about parliamentarians.
Well, I tend to agree with you. Things like this should be announced to Parliament first, but then obviously as a journalist we do...
Yeah, there is that.
So,
there is that.
Yeah. The hypocrisy.
But we're being manipulated, really, aren't we? We're being manipulated via the press.
Yeah.
to hear the good bits first, and I don't think that sits particularly well with the public. Let's have a little bit look at the detail of it, Ben. What are the standout issues for you? Because it feels a bit like a tinkering budget. They're sort of messing around with the little micro things. There's no huge announcements today.
That's right. There's not a huge amount of money to play with. In fact, there isn't. But the two things that the government will want to focus on is that extension of the energy price guarantee. So from April, average annual bills were due to go up to £3,000. They're actually going to be kept at £2,500. The energy price cap is £3,280. So if it had gone up to £3,000 over the course of a year, you'd pay, on average, £500 more. So that's going to be kept at £2,500 for another 3 months. The other thing is this big announcement on childcare. Now, that did come out sort of late afternoon yesterday. Unclear whether that was a deliberate leak or that was something that the Chancellor wanted to reveal as the rabbit in the hat this afternoon. But that's a big deal. So it's going to be 30 hours a week for the parents of 1- and 2-year-olds, free childcare. Currently, that exists for 3- and 4-year-olds. But to do it for 1- and 2-year-olds, that's a big move to try and get parents back into work.
But at least one of the parents has to be working 16 hours a week.
That's right, yes.
So there are caveats.
There are caveats to it. The idea is it'll get more people back into the workplace and address some of the labour shortages that have been hampering the economy over the past 18 months or so. I think there's still 1.2 million vacancies. The thing that's not going to be announced alongside that is a move to sort of try and get more of the over 50s back into it. Now, we are expecting something on that, but dealing with the long-term sickness, NHS waiting list, that's key to getting some of those over 50s back. Do
you know why some of the over 50s aren't back at work? Because they're doing the childcare. This is where I think they needed to be a little bit more original with this thinking on childcare, because a lot of parents of newborn babies, you know, on 1 to 2, which they are effectively, you know, new babies, they don't necessarily want to put them in nurseries. And I do wonder that whether the government could have done something a little clever in terms of allowing you to pay a family member. Granny daycare is huge, and that's why a lot of people over 50 aren't going back to work, because they're helping out their youngsters. It just feels a little bit unoriginal. We'll just throw money at the problem. Yeah, it is. I think as well, one thing that's interesting is it's going to take away from Labour, because Labour have been working for months and months on a big childcare offering. Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary, did a speech last week to a Tory-aligned think tank, didn't give any details of what she was actually going to do. And now, of course,
any ideas might have been stolen. They're going to be overshadowed.
We're hearing, by the way, Ben, that Cabinet's arriving at number 10, so they're going to be told what's in the budget statement, even though most of us know what's in the budget statement. If they've been reading the papers, they'll know what's in the budget. Suella Braverman's just gone in, apparently, the Home Secretary. Andrew Mitchell, the International Aid Minister, and I'm just trying to think who else we've seen going in. But going back to Bridget Phillipson and Labour and the childcare, the problem about being in opposition, if you come up with good plans, the government can nick it.
That has always been the problem.
Remember about
10 years ago, Ed Miliband and the blank sheet of paper. Well, part of the reason it was blank was because they didn't want to write down their ideas because they'd be stolen by the government. But then, on the other hand, should good ideas, surely you want them to be implemented. Does it matter?
But you don't if you've been in opposition for 13 years and you think you've got a great vote winner and that pesky Prime Minister pinches it. Remember the tax on the energy companies? That was a Labour plan. Tories nicked it.
Well, actually, Lib Dems would have it.
Lib Dems
originally.
And, of course, they don't get a look in, do they, here?
Not at all.
They're completely squeezed out the picture as the third party.
Do you think... were we expecting him to do any sort of windfall tax on these fuel companies? Like you say, they're going to keep this supplemented bill, effectively, was what it is. But there are a lot of people would say, well, hang on a minute, we don't want the taxpayers to be funding this. We've still got massive profits with the oil and gas companies.
The government would point to the windfall tax that it's already implemented. I don't suspect we'll see a new windfall tax today. In fact, if anything, the government, it's being billed as a budget for growth by Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. I think what they want to do is focus on, particularly with the lifting of the corporation tax rate that's angered so many Conservative backbenchers. This was penned in, this was done by Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor. It's still going to rise from 19% to 25% coming into effect next month. But they were going to want to emphasise, the government, the investment breaks that they're giving to companies, whereas if they spend money on new machinery, better factories, they'll get a 100% tax break on that investment.
Which is all right, but look, the fact is we are saddled with the biggest tax burden in 70 years. Now, Labour, your lot, who your paper supports, they normally like that. But this is a Tory government, Ben, and they're now about to stick another great big tax on us.
Well, certain Tory backbenchers are saying, if the Conservative Party is not for low tax, what is it for?
Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, takes that view.
Exactly.
She told us nearly last week.
We travelled to Paris with the Prime Minister last week for his UK-French summit with President Macron, and he was actually asked about low taxation, and he gave the answer we all expected. In general, of course he supports low taxes, but now's not the right time.
No sign of it.
No. The irony is, of course, this morning I was hearing quite a few left-wing commentators applauding...
Yeah, I know.
...applauding this budget.
The world's gone mad.
The world has gone mad. We saw it in the Hancock WhatsApps. I can't remember who the actual civil servant was who said this is a very conservative and used it as a pejorative term.
Yeah, I know.
With a capital C, very conservative ideology.
I think that was the Cabinet Secretary.
It was the Cabinet Secretary.
Simon
That's
Case.
who it was, yes, it was Simon Case, who said, and he used it as a pejorative term. Where has conservatism gone,
I ask it a lot, as one who struggles to support the Tories at the moment. Polls, though, have shown, Ben, no doubt, a narrowing of Labour's lead. I think the Tories have had quite a good run. I think he's done well on the Windsor framework. He's done incredibly well, I think, on Stop the Boats. Had a good meeting with Macron. With the President of the United States, when we talked, remember, the Shadow Cabinet about that a little later. And the polls lead has now narrowed to about 11%. Now, a few years ago, Tories 11 points behind Labour would be a state of national mourning. But that's a lot better than where they've been before.
They've really narrowed over the past few months. With Rishi Sunak, when he came in about 5 months ago, the idea was boring government and gently narrow that 20-point lead that Labour had built up with all the shambles of Liz Truss's premiership. And he has succeeded in doing that. I think what is key now in the 18 months or so before the election is delivery. Because, he has talked a good game, Rishi Sunak, but you haven't actually seen the effects of any of it yet. We've had the Windsor framework, we've had the deal to stop all the illegal migration bill on stopping the boats. You haven't stopped any boats yet. You need to see what happens in the delivery.